Shalom, everyone. It's time to talk Torah again. And this week's Torah portion is really very, very special to me. It is Parshat Mikeitz in the book of Genesis, which happens to be the Torah portion. On the Shabbat, I celebrated my very own adult bat mitzvah together with my dear mother of blessed memory, Hilda Kalir, in 1996. Right here at Temple Bethel, albeit still in the trailers down the block. Now, mother and daughter bat mitzvah is always very unusual and very special. This one was particularly so because for each of us, it actually was the very first bat mitzvah. My mother was born in pre-World War I Germany. And even though liberal Judaism had begun to kind of appear there, normally girls did not have bat mitzvahs yet. In my case, I was born in Jerusalem, Israel, so many years ago. And Orthodoxy totally ruled. And girls simply couldn't become bat mitzvah. All of which is just a little bit ironic because at that time already for a number of years, I was training bar and bat mitzvah of all ages at Temple Bethel for a long time. It was very meaningful for us for all those many reasons, but really the most unforgettable detail of that experience, it was miraculous, is that my mother was already at that time deep in the dark pit of Alzheimer's disease. Surely one of the cruelest destroyers of all. It eradicates brain cells, it turns the mind to scrambled mush, and it robs the person of all things that brain and mind can control. At the time of our Benot Mitzvah, my mother was sliding down toward the bottom of that terrible pit, but had not yet reached the bottom. She still remembered her Hebrew. She was able to read, could still chant, and yes, she was very musical, played the piano, sang, danced. She could chant prayers and read from the Torah scroll, some verses out of Parshat Mikeitz. It was really a marvel for me to watch at the time to realize the unfolding of Alzheimer's because some skills left long ago, but some skills stayed behind, and so she could do that. I guess the experts will be able to explain why that is and how that happens as some skills go and some skills hang around. Sadly, in time, my mother reached the bottom of that pit. She vanished. She was just gone while her body was still with us. And this where it leads us to Joseph's story. Joseph, the main character in Mikeitz. He too found himself inside a dark pit, a scary one, right? But his became a different story, right? His was a story of a young man, a young teenager. He was self-absorbed, self-loving, classic narcissist, worshipped by his own father, the patriarch Jacob, to the chagrin and extreme anger of his 11 brothers. Well, Joseph managed to further annoy them, not just by being immature generally, but by endless stories of dreams, of rulership over all of them. So these I am the greatest attitudes ended up costing him, for they decided to get rid of him permanently. While weighing their options, how to do that, they tossed him into that aforementioned dark pit, scary with snakes and spiders and awful, creepy, crawly things. But what happened here is this experience caused a wonder, namely, it was the catalyst for an enormous change of growth in Joseph's character, in his perceptions, in his life. I should add, of course, that here is where his story and my mother part company, because in her case, the pit was the beginning of the end for her. But for Joseph, we see him having acquired the ability to care for others, the evolution of humility within him started then, and faith came to Joseph. Joseph found God. He was transformed. This transformation ensured his survival, as we found out, and his success, a success which was not immediate because clearly all the things that he had to go through were being sold to Potiphar as a slave. Potiphar was a courtier of Egypt's king. He was then put in jail because he rebuffed the advances of the boss's wife. And jail being another kind of pit, if you want to think about it that way. But in jail, in prison, he blossomed. We see him noticing others, paying attention to cellmates. His cellmates, Pharaoh's baker and Pharaoh's cupbearer, one day looked off. And Joseph says to them, "You look upset. What's wrong?" The old Joseph would never even have noticed, wouldn't have known how to notice. Now the years of suffering, of life's up and down, they taught him that not he, but God are the center of the universe, something he made clear. Because when he was asked to interpret their dreams, and he did it successfully, he said, "It is God who interprets. He is the one. I am merely God's mouthpiece." And when his dream interpreting skills landed him at Pharaoh's court as viceroy, second in command to the king, Pharaoh himself was very taken with him. And here again, Joseph shows humility, continuing to give all credit to God. The most extraordinary example of this complete transformation of Joseph and his adherence of his newly found faith, the faith that has now fueled his matured life, we look at the incredible scene between him and his brothers. It is a scene rife with intrigue and drama, at the end of which the brothers who have come to Egypt because of a great famine in their area, they stand before Joseph, whom they do not recognize, hearing the unforgettable words of the grand reveal, "I am your brother, whom you discarded long ago, but do not feel guilty. It's okay. I am certain that all that has happened was orchestrated by God so that this great moment could happen and you and the family could be fed during these difficult days of hunger and strife." Joseph learned to forgive at a time when others might have given into anger and to revenge, teaching us that the trials and tribulations of life should diminish one's ego and open a space inside the heart for feelings for others and for the reality of God's continuing presence. And this, of course, goes back to one of Judaism's most central, most core teachings, centerpiece of Jewish ethics, in fact, and that is empathy, caring for the other, really seeing the face of the other. That's what we're about. Because if you really look and see the face of the other, you will see the image of God there. I say with delight and really a whole lot of longing that empathy and faith were also my mother's golden characteristics throughout her life. So with the notion of faith in our minds right now, turning our attention, albeit very briefly, to the Festival of Lights, to Hanukkah, which we are celebrating right now as we speak. In a year as dark as our current year has been, with a stubborn, killer global pandemic surrounding us for months, lighting Hanukkah candles almost seems like our personal protest against the darkness that seems so intent on dragging us down. We're declaring with each lighting that we know that every night is followed by a sunrise, every darkness followed by light. These Hanukkah days, we provide the light to demonstrate that we have the courage, the fighting spirit, the faith to illumine life's darkness whenever, wherever it may come, without ever losing faith. We believe. Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom.